10 horrible things that happen to morgue and funeral directors. You know how in the movies, the pathologist or funeral director has a snack while working and puts his sandwich on the dead body? No one would do that in real life, right? Of course not. In my case, it was a bowl of cereal. I had a friend when I was a kid. His father was hired to work in the morgue. He had to wash the hair of the dead. The first time he was left to work unattended, he rolled the body under the tap and turned on the water. There was a squeal and a cry. Cold. He ran out of that basement. His boss was standing at the door like crazy and laughing until he dropped, while his partner crawled out from under the gurney. I am a funeral director. About 15 years ago, we had a lady come to us whose husband had died in a terrible motorcycle accident. When she came to make the funeral arrangements, she mentioned that she wanted to take his leather jacket. People often want to take personal belongings from the deceased. However, in this case, the jacket was all torn, soaked in blood, and had bone fragments sticking out. The pathologist usually returns personal belongings in a sealed bag. As soon as this lady was given the bag, she immediately opened it and put on the jacket. The smell was terrible. I sincerely hope she is okay now. I am a refrigeration mechanic. Our company contracted with a funeral home that did everything at once: storage, embalming, cremation, etc. One of my first repairs was replacing a broken motor in their main refrigeration chamber for bodies. It was definitely a strange feeling, being the only living person in an ice chest containing 25 corpses. One of the deceased grandsons staged a tantrum at her coffin. In the process, he stole all of her jewelry. This was quickly noticed and a major brawl ensued. The jewelry was returned to its place. 2 later, we have a grandson who needs to be prepared and buried in a damn creepy way. Sometimes when people die and we turn them over to wash and dress them, there is still air in the air and they sigh as they move. This scared the crap out of me the first time I encountered it. I worked in a morgue for a few years. We have special techniques to keep the mouth closed while loved ones say their goodbyes. Otherwise, the angle of the head and neck would leave it wide open. And one day during one of these goodbyes, the machine broke down. And this deceased gentleman literally had his embalming lead open. No mouth. So I did the best I could. Got the family out of the rooms and superglued his mouth shut, but the deceased had no teeth and only superglue on his lips. Definitely not like a normal person, so he tries to scream. I had to call another morgue in town, and that embalmer used a giant needle and thread to stitch the deceased's mouth shut from the chin to the roof of his mouth. I was delivering pizza to a crematorium one time. A customer put the pizza on a cardboard coffin to get paid, and I couldn't take my eyes off the box on the conveyor belt leading into the crematorium chamber. I said, "That's disrespectful." The customer turned around and simply said, "Don't worry about him, he doesn't mind." I worked at a funeral home for a while. In the beginning, about a month in, I had to work on a holiday weekend. The only people working were the porters and me. They showed up, brought the body, and left right away. I thought they were still there and wanted to ask me something. I walked into the embalming room, and when I opened the door, this guy was sitting on a gurney, looking right at me. And I literally wet my pants from shock that this was a body that had been brought in from the county office. And this guy had died in a semi-sitting position and had rigor mortis. My brother worked in a morgue. He told me a story one time about how he lived in one of the parts of the funeral home building and he heard a muffled scream. He went to the front door to see if anyone was screaming for help, but there was no one there. He shrugged it off and went back to work. Then he heard it again. He said it was 2 men and a woman screaming. He looked around but couldn't find the source of the sound. He then checked the prep room, where he heard the same screams just outside the door. Inside were two men and a woman lying on tables. This was by far the most horrific incident of his life.